say thank you for everyone who came out this morning. We are in Freedom City. Make some noise if you feel that you are in Freedom City this morning. Dr. L. Browne was born on the island of St. Croix on July 28, 1975. Dr. Browne attended the Juanita Guardian Elementary School, Elena Christian Junior High School, and the St. Croix Central High School. Dr. Browne graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Community Counseling from the University of Northern Colorado. Recently, Dr. Browne received a Doctor of Education in Counseling Psychology from Agorsi University. Dr. Browne is well known as a community rights activist, a human rights activist. He is also a school counselor at the Claudio Marco Elementary School. Please put your hands together for Dr. L. Browne. Dr. L.
Good morning, everyone. I think the people in the back can hear me as well. It is an honor to be here today to speak about the legendary Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I like to talk a lot, but I don't do long speeches. But I do hope that the words that come out of my mouth are the words that the good Lord would want me to speak, and that those of you in attendance would be moved by my words, as well as those who might see this speech on social media. Yeah, you could stay. Okay. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was born in Atlanta, Georgia, on January 15, 1929. Dr. King attended Booker T. Washington High School. He skipped both the 9th and 11th grades and entered Morehouse College in Atlanta at the age of 15 in 1944. Dr. King would later go on to obtain a PhD at the ripe old age of 25. Dr. King would become a founding member of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and on August 28, 1963, he led the historic march in Washington, in which he made his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. Dr. King would fight for the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and he also received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. On April 4, 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated while crusading for a better quality of life for sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee. Dr. King was an imperfect human being, and his personal failings are well documented. However, Dr. King never promoted hate. Dr. King never promoted intolerance. Dr. King never promoted injustice. Dr. King never promoted exclusion. If Dr. King was alive today, he would advocate against violence in our homes, in our schools, and in our communities. If Dr. King was alive today, he would almost certainly express the view that girls and women are equals and should be treated as such in both their personal and professional lives. If Dr. King was alive today, he would talk about income inequality and economic development for all. If Dr. King was alive today, he would stand against leaders who feel that creating war is more important than embracing peace. If Dr. King was alive today, he would ask leaders around the world to value all life on this planet and to do more to reduce the human fingerprint in reference to climate change. Now, many of you are probably asking, how does Dr. Browne know what Dr. King would discuss in 2018? Well, I know Dr. King would talk about these subject matters because he spoke about many of these issues when he was alive. I know Dr. King would stand against violence in our communities because he once stated that in order to make the dream a reality, we must use and adopt a proper method. He went on to state, I am more convinced than ever before that nonviolence is the way. I am more convinced than ever before that violence is impractical as well as immoral. I know that Dr. King would champion equality for girls and women because he admired, acknowledged, and learned from powerful women in the civil rights movement like Dorothy Height, Mahalia Jackson, Ella Baker, and Coretta Scott King. Dr. King spoke about the war on poverty, and he believed in the dignity of work. What makes a job medial, he once asked. I'm tired of this stuff about medial labor. What makes it medial is that we don't pay folks anything. Give someone a job and pay them some money so they can live and educate their children and buy a home and have the basic necessities of life. And no matter what the job is, it takes on dignity. And at one point, Dr. King spoke up against the Vietnam War. Dr. King stated, "To me, the relationship of this ministry of peace is so obvious that I sometimes marvel at those who ask me why I'm speaking out against the war." And I know Dr. King would champion the survival of all life on this planet because he spoke passionately about the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado and the curvaceous peaks of California. Dr. King would frequently mention flying through dark clouds as he traveled around the world. Sometimes those dark clouds would scare Dr. King. However, he was always amazed by the stillness and beauty that existed above those dark clouds, a stillness and beauty that he felt only God could create. But one of the most important but often discounted subjects of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was that he spoke about wanting the best for his children and the children of others. Dr. King understood the sacrifices that many parents make in order to create a better life for themselves and their offspring. Today we live in a world where millions upon millions of good, hard-working human beings are leaving their nations of birth and traveling oftentimes under dangerous conditions to unknown shores. These human beings are often referred to as migrants, refugees, and illegal immigrants. Sometimes other words are used to describe these human beings, but those words are often derogatory and as venomous as a rattlesnake. There's a growing mindset around the world that certain human beings are not good enough to live in country A or country B. The unwillingness to recognize the plight of countless lives is creating a global atmosphere where using violence against the less fortunate of us is becoming all too common. Dr. King would challenge policies of exclusion and rebuke punishing children for the mistakes of their parents. Dr. King had a big dream for young people all around the world, and he wanted them to be their authentic selves in free and just nations. Dr. King would often talk about the values that he learned from his parents, but he would especially mention the sacrifices made by his mother, Mrs. Alberta Williams King. Dr. King had a special place in his heart for mothers, and he once wanted to admonish a classmate for looking down on his own mother. Dr. King wrote that according to his classmate, her verbs weren't quite right, and she didn't dress too well, and she lived in a rural area. After reading about the interaction between Dr. King and his classmate, I thought back to an experience that I had with my own mother. You see, when I started feeling like I was grown, and sometimes when you feel like you're grown, I told my mother something that she didn't like. I don't remember what I told her, but I sure do remember what she told me. She said, "Edward, everyone comes out of some hole, so don't get too high and mighty about yourself." All I could do at that moment was to look at my mother with the tears swelling in my eyes, because at that moment I realized that all of us come from somewhere, and sometimes those places are dark and dreary, and unfortunately some of the places that we come from don't always have the best infrastructure or even the best governance. However, where we come from does not define who we are. We are defined and who we are based on our words and our deeds. Dr. King understood the premise that loving humanity is not a weakness, but a strength. In closing, we live in a time when the evils done to our collective ancestors are once again creating dark clouds. We are living in a time when gross human rights violations such as slavery, mass sexual assaults, unsolved murders of indigenous tribal leaders, and torture are often dismissed like an old rag. However, Dr. King articulated the path that we collectively need to take to combat such evil forces. He once said, "We need not hate. We need not use violence. We can stand up before our most violent opponent and say, we will match your capacity to inflict suffering with our capacity to endure suffering. We'll meet your physical force with soul force. Do to us what you will and we will still love you. We cannot in good conscience obey your unjust laws, because non-cooperation with evil is as much a moral obligation as a cooperation with good." I personally believe that we should not remain silent when we see evil forces appearing on the horizon. We should not remain silent when confronted with hate, intolerance, injustice, and exclusion. Because while silence is not a form of agreement or a form of acceptance, silence is a powerful way to communicate. Remaining silent is a choice that ultimately comes down to who you and we are at that moment. So my question to everyone in this park today is, will you remain silent or will we speak up, as that moment is now? Thank you.